I think in the better days before the recession, when firms were performing better and promotion and pay increases were more readily available, it was very easy for the leadership to want to communicate, give the good news and keep spreading the word, and there was very little difficult news to talk about. But for the last 3 or 4 years it's been totally the opposite, and leadership to me has sort of gone into hiding about communication. They don't want to deliver bad news, they don't know how to put together bad messages, and it's even more important at times like this to communicate with people and to be very open and transparent with them about what's going on in the business, what the opportunities are, what the challenges are, because people will respond better to that if they understand all of that. So management actually needs to be working harder in these difficult times on communication and engagement with their people to try and retain their interest, their motivation and their commitment to helping the firms get through these difficult times. The role of communication often falls to the marketing department, which is great as far as external communications and public relations is concerned, but the marketing people don't necessarily understand those motivations of people and the different groups of people across the organisation. HR is in a perfect position to really get under the skin of those different parts of the organisation, the differences that they need in the way that they're communicated with and what they want to hear. So it's very, very important that HR is involved. But having said that, it's also important that we're aligning internal communication with external communication all the time. Because the worst thing that can happen is your employees hear something about the organisation from the external press before you've communicated the message yourself. So what I've been doing in my roles recently is sitting down every 2 weeks with the external communications people, charting out what's going to be happening over the next 3 months, what communications do we want to be making to the outside world, what things going on within the organisation might the press get hold of and make a story out of, and then making sure we've got internal communications ready that are totally aligned with the external communications, and then we trigger those first so that our staff hear the message from us first before they hear it externally, and then they can understand and make their own interpretation of the external message. Communications for me have to be a two-way street, so you've got to create forums, media that allow people to not just receive communication but give you feedback that you can then understand their position and act on. So we've set up employee forums with our people where we can test out ideas with them before we move to implementation of new HR processes or policies, so that they can take that back to the people they represent, bring back the feedback, and we can adapt then the implementation to reflect the feedback we receive. They can also raise issues with us about things that are concerning them across the firm, and we can nip things in the bud before they become big issues. So two-way is a very important thing. Another tip I think is lots and lots of openness and transparency. If you try and spin a message or hide something, I think you're going to come unstuck, because we're typically dealing with very intelligent people who really do understand what's going on within the business. And for example, if the salary review this year isn't going to be a very generous one, rather than leave it until the moment when everybody gets their letter, opens the envelope and is disappointed with what they read, let's have a communication 6 weeks before that sets the expectation that for these reasons it's been a tough review this year, here's what it means. But what this does mean is you've all still got jobs, we've still got development opportunities for you, and you've sort of set the expectations and the tone so that when the letter's opened, it's just a confirmation, it's not a surprise. Also, a lot of firms go in for staff surveys, engagement surveys, to try and test how happy their people are. These surveys are fantastic, but often the questionnaires are too long and they become a chore to fill in. So keep them short and to the point and focused on the issues you really want feedback on. And you can use the feedback then to build improvement initiatives across the organisation. But my tip would be, you're going to receive a lot of feedback and you're going to want to solve a lot of issues. but just pick the one or two key issues and deal with them properly first, and communicate with people why you're doing this, and then tell them when you've done it, and then tell them again the results of you doing it. So keep it to one or two key issues. Now that can be enterprise-wide across the whole organisation. You can also run in parallel with that within each of the business functions or business lines, one or two issues specific to their feedback, and in that way benchmark the performance of the leaders of those business lines and encourage them to improve the situation themselves. I think we've got to think about how the landscape of how we employ people is changing. Many organisations are becoming more virtual in their operation, so expensive property is driving people now to think about home working, to think about siting their employees at their clients' or customers' premises rather than in expensive property in the city. So we're getting more virtual organisations, and that presents a whole new set of challenges for how you communicate and engage with people when you hardly ever see them. HR's got to be thinking about that and thinking about how do we supplement that with different things. I think another thing that's happening at the moment is greater use of technology all around us all the time. And social media in particular is just such a growing phenomenon. So it's how do we use that as a weapon rather than try and defend against social media. I've seen organisations who ban their staff from using Facebook and Hotmail and what have you during working hours, which is just crazy these days, you know, because that's just the way that people live. So rather than try and stop that sort of thing, you embrace it and explain how we want people to use it and try and engage with people that way ourselves, so that we make a virtue out of using the social media rather than trying to sit behind it. But these virtual organisations are going to come across us more and more, and it's been going on for a number of years. I remember a few years ago when I was a partner with Field Fisher Waterhouse, we had a team of about 250 people out at British Airways at Heathrow Airport working on building the new World Cargo Centre out there. And 250 consultants out there for 2.5 years, and the big danger was they would go native, so they stopped being Price Waterhouse employees and become British Airways employees. They would lose the good habits that we'd instilled in them and infect us with the bad habits, if you like, of the client. So we had to work out a whole new way of communicating and engaging with that group of people who were 40 miles remote from the office, and making sure we maintain the momentum all the way through the project. So I think HR's got to be thinking about how this technology, how these virtual organisations are going to impact on our people, and then find new ways of engaging, communicating and making sure we've got this two-way conduit going.